Part 1. Anna, 5 years ago. I broke a law today but gained an ally in the unlikeliest of people. Her name is Spencer, and she's one of the two. Nearly 13 years ago, two children were born, just after the announcement of a prophecy, but their existence was kept a secret from the Castor community for quite some time before they were discovered. The day they were born, all 7 elder demigods, representing the 7 continents of the world, did a simultaneous tower reading, as they do every 200 years with freshly made cards, and the first card they all drew was the Lovers. Every single one of them at the same time drew that card. It was fate. Nothing like that had ever happened before, and so they actually restarted the reading, all while it was being broadcast via television and radio to the masses. They shut off the cameras and microphones of today and went back to the old ways. Something like that had never been done before. Restarting a tarot reading was unheard of. But if they restarted the reading using the old ways, they thought they might get different results. Stopping the broadcasting to the people was even more unheard of because it was such a big deal to the people. The last one had been done 200 years earlier and had been circulated via Oracle. This was supposed to have been broadcast on live TV. The other cards they drew in secret after that are a mystery, but no matter how many times they redid it to confirm, it said that the reading was the same: the Lovers, followed by 8 unidentified cards. The 7 elders and the old ones were trying to tell them something about the state of the Castor world, but that they didn't know what. They told everybody to be calm, not to fear, for the old ones always knew what they were doing, that there was a plan for everything in life, and that the old ones knew it all before it happened, and there was nothing anyone could do to stop them. And then, months later, the 2 were found, and people had various reactions. Some wanted the children to be terminated. Some wanted their parents locked away for breaking such a taboo. Many people in power truly didn't want the children to live, but the council decreed that they would indeed be allowed to live. Of course, I was only a newborn baby when this happened, so this information has been easily accessible to me since, forever, and now that I'm 13, I feel like I'm some sort of expert on the subject of the 2. I've grown up surrounded by people talking about them for so long that before I met them, it felt like I already knew them, Spencer and Caden. Born at exactly the same time down to the second, they're 2 impossible combinations of Castor and Familiar, something that shouldn't be possible. Castors and humans can't mix. Both brought before the council when discovered just weeks apart, thanks to their respective families having kept them hidden. It was determined on national TV that they were not a threat. They were just babies. But they had to be watched, of course, for any signs that might make them harmful to our community. I remember being 4 years old, wondering why the 2 kids on TV were such big deals. They were just kids like me, weren't they? Not quite. It was decided that they were better off not even knowing what they were, so at age 4 their memories were suppressed and they started anew, living with 1 foot in the human world and 1 foot in the world of the old ones. Of course, everybody was in an uproar about the children even existing. Soon tales of what their existences meant for our world were spun. Everybody waited with bated breath as the children were raised as humans, sheltered from the knowledge of what they were or where they came from, until being finally allowed to integrate into Castor society when they turned 12. The kids were too smart and knew that they were different even from their parents. And the memory suppression of their youth couldn't last forever. They started to ask questions once that nobody was allowed to answer. It had become law. Do not give them any information about the world that they haven't already gleaned for themselves. And what they knew were the basics. We are not like humans. We are not like our parents. We are not like anybody, and we are not like each other. Everybody who is like our parents knows who we are, and we are not allowed to tell the humans anything. Everybody was told to keep their distance from the children, even though they were labeled completely harmless, but many ignored the decree out of sheer curiosity, often walking right up to the children and asking questions the kids couldn't answer. As long as they betrayed no information about our world to them, all was fine. But it seemed people didn't always like to follow the rules. The children were to figure out their places in the world for themselves, and these people didn't make it much easier on them. It was decreed that they were to have no friends. They were to remain alone together. Growing up, I always wanted to befriend them out of spite. Having nobody isn't fair. Spencer is mostly familiar in appearance, and Caden mostly Castor in appearance, but their energies are unique. Nobody knows how to classify them. Their energies feel like those of a natural-born demigod different even from each other. Alone even together, as I said. Today at school, they weren't allowed to take part in classes about our world like affinity education, Tarot 101, and the history of caster and familiar companionship, only being allowed to take the general education courses required by the human government for every student. Needless to say, they have a lot of free time to roam the halls of the fine Walker High, which appears as a local community college and high school, but is actually a school for my kind, familiar and caster kind. Why allow them into our schooling system if they're not allowed to take part in any classes about the old ways? It makes little sense to me. I broke a law today by befriending Spencer, having coincidentally moved into her apartment complex. I mean, what are the odds? I used it as a chance to talk to her, to see what she's like. And she's nice. Like, really, truly nice. She's just a 12-year-old kid that wants to fit in. I mean, she tried out for the cheer squad. Grown men are terrified and threatened by her existence, and she's a girly girl. Spencer's shorter than a grade schooler, has skin the color of eggshells, and her hair is white with natural faint streaks of red that she seems unaware of. She's covered in pale freckles and is the epitome of sweet. When I laid eyes on her in person, she looked half broken, and that bothered me. It made me feel funny inside, like I had to befriend her. Spencer told me she's never had any female friends before, a fact I already figured but said nothing. She's never been treated like she belongs in our community, and as soon as she smiled at me that first time, I knew that getting to know her as more than just a casual school acquaintance would be the first of many laws I'd willingly break in order to help find her place. Something in her drew me to her despite myself. My parents, of course, support my decision. She is, after all, half familiar and we take care of our kind, but they worry that it'll mark me as an outcast. I told them I'd rather be kind and an outcast than unwillingly ignore someone who needs a friend, and Spencer really needs a friend. I've always been sort of an outcast anyway. Having a mental illness in the familiar community isn't uncommon. We are human, after all, but having a mental illness has its own sort of stigma in my world. A weak familiar is a useless familiar. Most of my peers have always viewed me as pathetic for having mental illness, even more so because I'm a familiar who was untethered, and we are supposed to be the strongest type of familiar there is, and yet I can't seem to be able to do jack shit in the way of energy summoning. I can see energy, sure, and sense it too, but that's about all I've been able to master. Familiars are supposed to be able to move energy into a caster, or in an emergency, another human being. By age 13, I should be able to at least move energy around on my own. I should be able to direct it into one place by will alone. I can't. So you see, I know what it's like to be an outcast. I believe that in the coming year, Spencer and Caden will come into themselves, and when that happens, I might be the only person willing to answer their questions if the friendships we make in high school don't count for much, and we end up only having each other. I'm hoping we amass at least a small group of outcasts like ourselves, wildcards, kids everybody else underestimates. Nobody deserves to be in the dark when there's a chance that they can see the sun, and I want Spencer and Caden to see the sun. I hope we make lasting friendships that help us. I hope nobody tries to hurt them.